Mr. Jackson, you're going to be free to go.
And I thank you for it, from the bottom of my heart.
Being falsely accused of a crime you didn't commit is also a devastating tragedy.
Therefore, in light of the foregoing reasons, the motion for a new trial is hereby granted.
I'm so excited right now.
I feel grateful. I'm so happy.
Verdict Form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Viagas not guilty of...
Meet Eric Kelly, a man wrongfully convicted of robbery and murder in Passaic County, New Jersey. Sentenced to life in prison, he spent 24 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. It all began when a man was tragically killed while working at a video store. Eric Kelly, then 28 years old, found himself in the crosshairs of suspicion due to his proximity to the crime scene. Kelly suffered a severe brain injury, leaving him with cognitive disabilities, which made it challenging for him to interact with detectives and leading to a coerced admission of guilt. 24 years later, advancements in DNA testing shed new light on Kelly's case.
Therefore, in light of the foregoing reasons, the motion for a new trial is hereby granted.
Kelly is now free from prison for the first time in nearly 25 years after a new trial was approved, still worried that he would turn back.
Mainly, I want to eat. I'm a little hungry. My legal team, I want to thank them. I want to thank my family. Just want to get back to actually living for once.
The prosecution stunned many by dismissing all pending charges against Kelly. He reportedly received $1 million in state compensation. Meet Clemente Agir, a man wrongly sentenced to death for a double murder he didn't commit in Altamonte Springs, Florida.
I do know that nobody believed me back then. No one. Besides my mother, nobody believed me.
About 14 years ago, Agir, who lived nearby the victims, became the prime suspect when a mother and daughter were killed. Suspicion fell on him when he visited the women's house that night seeking beer, but only to discover the bodies. Agir attempted to help but fled in panic. He didn't call the police, fearing deportation as an illegal immigrant from Honduras. However, later that day, Agir went to police and told that he saw the dead bodies. He was then arrested and convicted of 2 murders and sentenced to death.
I didn't do it. I don't kill nobody.
It wasn't until 9 years after Agir was led out of court that it became clear that the DNA may not have been authentic. Therefore, Agir's attorneys requested further examinations. As it turned out, Agir's story matched every DNA sample he had taken, suggesting that his presence at the scene corroborated his attempts to save the victims. Following a 14-year incarceration period, including 11 years on death row, Agir's charges are withdrawn.
And I thank you for it, from the bottom of my heart.
He embraces his team and the loved ones, finally as a free man. The state allegedly owes Agir $720,000 for the false conviction. State attorneys are opposing it though, and he hasn't heard anything of compensation as of yet. His immigration situation is still open. Meet Ricky Jackson, who spent over 39 years locked up for a murder crime he didn't commit. At the age of 18, Jackson was jailed in Ohio, together with 2 other men for assaulting and shooting a businessman outside a small grocery store on the city's east side, where he delivered money orders. The key witness in his case was 12-year-old Eddie Vernon, who later admitted he hadn't seen the murder and was pressured by police to testify falsely against Jackson. Initially sentenced to death, Jackson's punishment was later commuted to life imprisonment after 2 years on death row. Nearly 4 decades later, Eddie Vernon, now 52, stepped forward, confessing he had never witnessed the crime. With this revelation, charges against Jackson were dropped, and after almost 4 decades of wrongful incarceration, he finally hears the words declaring his freedom.
Mr. Jackson, you're going to be free to go. Life is filled with small victories, and this is a big one. I wish you good luck. Thank you.
For the first time in nearly 4 decades, Jackson walks out as a free man. Jackson is believed to have served the longest prison term of anyone in the United States who has been exonerated. He receives $1 million in compensation from the state and an additional $2.65 million for lost income. Meet Deborah Milka, a German-American woman who served 22 years on death row in Phoenix, Arizona, for crimes she did not commit.
My innocence did not matter in their pursuit of a conviction.
Her 4-year-old son was found dead in the desert, shot 3 times in the head. Milka voluntarily went to the sheriff's office where she was interrogated. Despite no recorded confession, Detective Armando Saldati claimed Milka admitted to orchestrating the murder.
He then decided that it'd be best for Christopher Milka to die.
Milka was charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, kidnapping, child abuse, and first-degree murder. At trial, prosecutors relied on the alleged confession, and she was convicted of all charges and sentenced to death. Details regarding unrecorded confessions didn't surface until after 20 years.
I had absolutely nothing to do with the brutal murder of my son, Christopher, and I did not give a confession to Mr. Saldati.
The court reportedly discovered that Detective Saldati had a lengthy record of lying under oath and infringing Milka's rights during questioning. The single concrete evidence connecting her to the crime was the purported confession. Finally, her conviction is overturned 24 years after she was arrested and was facing the death penalty. Pay attention as she shares her feelings on the false conviction.
Losing a child to murder is a devastating tragedy. Being falsely accused of a crime you didn't commit is also a devastating tragedy. Try to imagine that. What happened to me could happen to any one of you.
Milka walks free, although there are no details of her receiving any compensation payments. Meet Curtis Flowers, who endured 23 years of wrongful imprisonment, facing the death penalty for a quadruple murder he reportedly didn't commit in Winona, Mississippi. Flowers, just 26 years old at the time, found himself at the center of suspicion after being fired from a furniture store where the owner and 3 employees were later found brutally murdered. Despite no physical evidence tying him to the crime scene, Flowers became the prime suspect. His arrest and subsequent trials all ended with guilty verdicts and a death sentence. However, as the legal saga unfolded, investigators uncovered deeply troubling issues with the prosecution's tactics. It was revealed that across all 6 trials, the prosecution had systematically excluded African American jurors, indicative of racial discrimination in jury selection. The case eventually reached the U.S. Supreme Court, which unanimously overturned Flowers' conviction based on the racially biased jury selection.
The only times that Mr. Flowers is allowed to be away from the location where he will be residing is if he's receiving medical treatment, attending meetings with his attorney.
With this landmark decision, Flowers was granted bail, marking his first taste of freedom in over 2 decades.
I'm so excited right now.
A year later, the state officially dropped all charges against Flowers, acknowledging the grave miscarriage of justice he endured. Additionally, the state of Mississippi announced it would compensate Flowers with $500,000 for his 23 years of wrongful imprisonment. Meet Kirsten Lobato, who endured 16 years of wrongful imprisonment for a murder she did not commit. At just 18 years old, she faced charges for the brutal killing of a homeless man in Las Vegas. Initially convicted of first-degree murder, Lobato underwent a retrial, where she was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 13 to 45 years in prison. Despite the reduced charge, she maintained her innocence. After spending 16 years behind bars, a new hearing revealed crucial evidence. On the day of the victim's death, Lobato was 3 hours away with her family, providing an ironclad alibi that disproved her involvement in the crime. For Lobato, this marks her first taste of freedom as a free woman.
I feel overwhelmed. I feel excited. I feel grateful. I'm so happy.
She has since filed a lawsuit against the Las Vegas Police Department, seeking justice for her wrongful imprisonment.
So where's your now?
Okay, well, we got more people coming too.
Meet Daniel Viagas, who endured 18 years of wrongful imprisonment for a double homicide he never committed in El Paso, Texas. Arrested at just 16, Viagas faced coercion from an El Paso detective who allegedly threatened him with violence and the death penalty if he didn't confess. Despite attempting to retract his confession shortly after, he was charged with 2 counts of capital murder, with the coerced confession serving as the sole evidence against him. Following a mistrial due to the jury's inability to reach a verdict, Viagas faced a retrial where he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. However, after spending 18 years behind bars, the verdict was overturned, and Viagas was released on bond, where he built a life with his family. Now, in his 3rd trial, the pivotal moment arrives.
If the defendant will please stand.
The courtroom holds its breath as Viagas awaits his fate. Will he go home or sent back to prison to serve his life sentence?
The State of Texas versus Daniel Viagas. Verdict Form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Viagas not guilty of...
With those words, Viagas is finally a free man.
You are no longer under any conditions. You are free to leave. Thank you.
Reports indicate that Viagas has filed a lawsuit against the city of El Paso, seeking justice for his wrongful imprisonment.